Hello everyone, and welcome to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Hello and welcome to this weekday bonus episode of the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Today we're delighted to welcome back friend of the pod, Robert Forrester, CEO of Vertu Motors, recently rated number 4 in the AM100 and number 7 in ICDP's latest top 50 European dealer groups. Now, we last caught up with Robert back in May, so there's plenty to catch up on, especially with the budget still fresh in everyone's mind. So welcome back to the podcast, Robert. Good to have you back on. I mean, the budget was only a week or so ago, but these days that seems to be a long time in the automotive retailing sector, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
We don't need to go back to May, do we, Robert?
One day we'll sit back and look at it and try and understand what went on, won't we?
Yes.
Yeah, and we certainly need to go back to May. I think 7 days is long enough at the minute to talk about what's going on. But I know you've been busy. I mean, you are busy anyway. Let's not kid ourselves. But obviously, since some of the announcements within the budget, you've been very busy in terms of trying to portray reality against perception, I suppose, in many ways. So, I mean, let's start there, Robert, in terms of the budget and the impact you think it will have on your business in many ways, and obviously the wider sector. I mean, there's a lot to digest from the EVD for EVs, the pay per mile for full BEVs and obviously the plug-in hybrid elements of it, and other things in terms of the fuel duty frees and the 5p subsidy. So let's start with that. I mean, what's your view for your business and probably your view on the wider sector from these?
I actually thought the budget had some quite big positives in it. Clearly, the postponing of any changes on ECOS reflected quite a concerted effort by the government by the industry to make sure the government fully understood the impact. So we were very pleased with that. The fact there were no radical changes to Motability is clearly a big win, given the importance of Motability to the new car market. So I think that was a big win because that could have gone horribly wrong, I think. But I think, again, the industry did well to explain to the government what was what. So the government clearly listening. In terms of economic growth, I don't think anybody's optimistic at all. Tax clearly up on pretty well everybody. So I think that's going to have an impact in terms of consumer confidence, consumer firepower, and probably same for businesses. So I think that is a bit of a dampener on UK prospects and prospects for the sector. Some people will still do very well. The good operators will still do very well, clearly. In terms of electric vehicles, I think that is the biggest issue that the industry faces. The ZEV mandate has reduced volumes, reduced margin, put the manufacturers under intolerable pressure. The pressure builds, it continues to escalate. I think we've now got a major issue with regard to vans, with the ZEV mandate tightening on vans, as well as we have with cars. I think the pay per mile levy actually is inevitable. Clearly, they've got to find a way of working it. Put that to one side for a minute. Clocking, fascinating, that one. But I actually think it could work to the advantage in the short term of the industry, insofar as liaising with the government in speedy order in 2026 to explain to them the economic realities of what this ZEV mandate is doing to economic growth, to manufacturer production, to investment, to jobs, and getting quite a radical change, which would considerably improve the prospects for the sector, in my view. And I think the Europeans are likely to change their regime, which is already far more liberal than our regime in timing and in fines, and help the manufacturers in Europe to have more chance of actually making the transition. And I think the UK government's going to have to act. So I think that is number one for next year, is for the industry to liaise with the government and to make meaningful, substantial changes to give the industry a platform for 10 years where we end up electric, but we don't suffer massive consequences, negative ones, in the interim.
And I mean, you touched on the ZEV mandate there, but obviously, the immediate announcement was obviously the pay per mile for EVs and the reduced rate for plug-in hybrids. As you know, presumably on the assumption that there is still fuel duty being earned from the fuel side, the petrol or diesel side of a hybrid, which I suppose many will question on that one. Do you think it's been introduced too early to the consumer? Bearing in mind, it don't come in until April 2028. And do you think the transition to EV is strong enough for this not to have an immediate impact?
I'll deal with the second one first. No, I think that this undoubtedly slows down the transition to electric vehicle powertrains, and the OBR have said that. The OBR have said that they expected the levy to result in a 440,000 reduction in electric vehicle sales in the past period. So that's fairly definitive. Let's just go with that number. If the government is going to have an accelerated timetable of electric vehicle adoption, which is their stated policy backed up by the pernicious ZEV mandate, government revenues, given there will be a decline in significant decline in fuel duty collected. So unless you in fairness, they've given a few years notice policy. I just think now you've got other issues with it, haven't you? Clocking and
yes,
how on earth you measure it and all that good stuff we could debate a long time. But actually, forget all the debate on that. The impact it makes the ZEV mandate worse. It makes it harder for the manufacturers to hit the numbers, to avoid the fines, and that is not very good for the economy, and it's certainly not very good for manufacturers, and it is not very good for retailers.
Because you're back into that forced trajectory rather than natural adoption.
Well, we've always been on a forced trajectory, and we know where this forced trajectory leads. One, it leads to rationing of petrol and diesel cars. Two, it leads to horrible discounting of electric vehicles, which are phenomenal pieces of technology and reflects billions of investment on which the manufacturers are getting no return. I mean, I did laugh actually at the OBR, if I can just remember what the statement said. It's something like, it said there will be action taken in the light of the pay-as-you-go levy, where manufacturers will reduce the price of electric vehicles. Well, that's a mystery to me, really, because they're losing money now. And secondly, will restrict petrol and diesel sales. It basically said that.
And Robert, another part of the budget was the extension of funds into the electric car grant with an additional £1.3 billion. Do you welcome that as a move? And also, has the electric car grant had a meaningful impact on new EV sales, certainly for your business since it was introduced?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen a benefit in franchises which have had the grant. I mean, the classic case was the meteoric rise of the Ford Puma Gen E.
Yes, that was September. A funny one, wasn't it?
It was that good. I bought one myself. I bought one myself. It was that good. So it has had an impact. It has probably increased electric vehicle sales as a proportion of the whole, but it does quite a bit skew demand, doesn't it? Because clearly some people have got it and some people haven't got it. Meaningful is an interesting word. Is it sufficient as an incentive and a subsidy from taxpayers to hit ZEV mandate targets? And the answer is no, it isn't. Not in a hope. Not a hope of that happening. So that's probably a definition of meaningful. Do I welcome it? Well, if the ZEV mandate is in place, then I welcome it. My argument would probably be we are using taxpayers' money to try to get to a policy which is not needed.
Yes. Yeah. And Robert, following on from that, with the extension of these funds for the electric car grant, should it have been extended to cover used EVs as well?
I don't think so, to be honest. Where does this end?
Yeah.
Has the taxpayer got a surplus of money? No. What do we? I mean, do you want to subsidise my Sainsbury's shop? I mean, the government's got no money because the taxpayer hasn't got a lot of money. We can't just continue the government just coming up with money. The government hasn't got any money. It's the taxpayer that's got money. And actually, businesses create value, pay employees who pay tax, and then the corporations, we pay tax as well. So I don't think taxation is the answer to many problems, subsidies, really. The reason why I actually approve of subsidies in this case is the reason we need subsidies is because the government have imposed a regime of fines and targets which the market cannot deliver. Therefore, you have to have subsidies.
Yeah.
I suppose the question is on that, Robert, and you say a lot of people are trying to lobby for, as you say, incentives on used EVs, but that's part of that challenge is because of what's happening in the new with the ZEV.
Yeah, I mean, I fundamentally believe in free market economics. There is no question in my mind that if we didn't have a ZEV mandate, the manufacturers are making electric vehicles. They are increasingly cheaper, so people can afford them. And over the next 10 or 15 years, we will end up with an electrified net zero car park.
Yeah.
That will happen. The problem is we've been forced into doing it too early, and we can't do it actually at all without crashing the new car market. So that's when you get into arguments about subsidies. I completely understand why people want subsidies, but it's overcoming a problem that doesn't exist. The problem exists because the government has made the problem.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is a view that if you actually let the new car market, find its level,
then we wouldn't have a residual problem in used vehicles, would we?
You wouldn't have.
We just wouldn't. We'd have supply and demand. It would all balance off beautifully, and
because the longer
that's how it works.
The longer you create volatility as residual values, it creates uncertainty and caution. And that's where some of the risk comes in. You'd be better off putting 1.3 billion into the infrastructure and that side of it, and marketing and removing.
I think if you took the ZEV mandate and made it, I don't know, 2035, far more, soft in the transition, and you cut the fines to something much reduced from the £12,000 it currently is, and you've got to sort out vans as well, because vans are worse than cars actually. And then you put the money you're saving, because actually what would happen? We'd sell more cars, the government would get more VAT, more VED, and we then have the government, if it wanted to, could then put the infrastructure in, if it wanted to.
Yeah, at the right time. And in the right way is probably.
And in fairness, I mean, I drive an electric car. There is more infrastructure. The M1 18 months ago was a desert for electric vehicle chargers. Now you can go, and there's plenty.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters, a special weekday episode of Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising.
I mean, just back to the budget a little bit. I mean, it's been described as a long tail. There's so much to unpick. It's very much back-end weighted, 28, 29, 2030. There are obviously views as to why that is the case, on the hope that some of this stuff might be reversed if the economy starts to recover. What's the general feeling around, confidence in the sector? I mean, we're close to Christmas and New Year. 2026 is just around the corner. from a dealer perspective, from a retail perspective, in terms of that consumer confidence, business confidence, what's the general feeling out there, the general sentiment?
I think it's a bit early to say, really. I think business confidence clearly took a knock in advance of the budget. It's beautiful that we've got it out of the way. It went on for too long, all the speculation, everything. We now know what at least what the issues are. We haven't got an ECOS issue. We haven't got a major mobility issue. So I take some comfort from that. I am actually fairly optimistic. I think the chances of getting the government to modify the zero emission mandate are higher now than they were before the budget. And I keep saying that is the key issue. That will, if we woke up one morning and that was done, the confidence in our industry would double, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's like you say. I think that, I mean, is that due for 2027?
Well, it's due for 2027, but my personal opinion is it needs to be brought forward quite considerably.
Yeah.
I would like Q1 2026, because 2026 is going to be very difficult for the manufacturers, and they're going to be doing all kinds of things, and we know the plan there if they end up with big fines. So my personal view is it needs to be earlier. I see no reason why we'll wait, and hopefully if the Europeans do change it, that puts another onus on the government to actually do something. In terms of overall confidence, I think, as I said before, good operators are still doing well. Actually, it's challenging, but we have to manage costs. We have to make sure we maximize every inquiry. We have to make sure we employ really good, motivated, committed people. And that's what business has to do. And in 5 years' time, we'll still be selling cars. In 10 years' time, we'll still be selling cars. We've just got to be very, very good at it. And, I get quite motivated by, having to get the business better in order to succeed because of the relatively challenging environment. But at the end of it, how good will it be? And actually, when the ZEV mandate does get relaxed and the new car market can get back to some reasonable volumes and we can get back to some new car profitability, we will have a very good business in a much better environment.
Now, Robert, as we close in on the final weeks of the year, what looking back, what have been some of the highlights and challenges from an operational point of view for the group this year?
Well, clearly, at the start of the year, we had to deal with the £10 million increase in cost that the Chancellor gave us last time she appeared. And we dealt with that early. We had a real focus on costs, and our operating expenses in the first 6 months of the year were 0.3% up, like for like, which I think was an amazing performance.
Yeah.
So I think that was a challenge. We've clearly got to think through the disruption coming from Chinese new OEMs, which I know you talk about a lot on the podcast, and I think that is clear. And we've grown our BYD representation. We've got a strong MG representation, and actually news for you. We've not spoken about it before, but we will be going into the Geely franchise. So we will be opening some Geely dealerships next year, which I think makes a lot of sense. So that balance of how much you invest in new entrants versus the core business, I think, is an interesting one, and one we've got to do. There's a lot to think about there. That's a new thing that senior management have had to think about quickly in terms of what's your portfolio look like. So, and we've actually, and you'll have seen it, we've announced 2 managing directors to the business, because I think, one, it's a big business, nearly 5 billion turnover, but 2, getting closer to manufacturers, I think, is critical. Understanding the Chinese and what our portfolio needs to look like. So that's really why we've done that, to free me up to go and do some more of that. That starts 1st of January, and I'm quite pleased with that.
Yeah. And Robert, you raise an interesting point there about new franchises, because I mean, the three of us can remember when a new franchise launch was a pretty rare event. It may happen every 3 or 4 years, but over the last 2 years, we've had so many new brands enter the UK, and there's more to come. You as a group, you will be certainly on the hit list of a number of these brands. So How on earth do you go about weighing up the pros and cons of which ones you want to add to your portfolio?
Well, it's actually quite difficult because, let's remember what we're trying to do. We're investing shareholders' money in franchises that are new to the UK and may or may not succeed. And there's all kinds of other considerations, geopolitical risk, etc., etc. So it's not for the faint-hearted, I don't think. How we go about it, I think you've got to educate yourself. I, in fact, just have on my desk a letter inviting me to China. So I have never been to China, but I'm going to go to China in March and do a bit of fact-finding myself, which I think will be interesting. You've just got to make professional judgments, haven't you?
Yes.
Talk to people, understand the franchises. One key question I have for new entrants is, what is your marketing budget in pound millions? Because if you can't answer that question meaningfully, I don't think you should invest. Because how much does it cost to build a brand in the United Kingdom, a meaningful brand?
Yeah.
Now, Kazoo and Cinch spent a lot of money, didn't they? Successfully, actually, both built big brands. And it's a crowded field. I think Ian Plummer told me the other day, 74 different franchises now in the UK.
Yes.
I don't think I can name 74.
No.
To be honest, I mean, that would be a pub quiz question. That one, I'm not sure I could get to 74. And to be honest, I should know, shouldn't I?
I think that if the three of us were on the same pub quiz team, I think we'd still struggle.
We'd struggle with it. I think we would. So, as a challenge for you on a podcast one day, is how many can you say? So this is a bit of a challenge, I think, for people to do, and people will make some good decisions and people will make some poor decisions, and managing that relationship and investments. I mean, when you had a stable set of franchises, you did probably, we spent time with the manufacturers. It was important to spend time with the manufacturers, but I've now got to spend more time with the manufacturers, not just the new ones, because I've got to spend time with the manufacturers of the traditional manufacturers, call them that, of, right, what's the plan? How are you reacting? Where do you see it going, etc., etc.?
Yeah, I say it's getting harder and harder. But as you say, you've appointed those two managing directors, which alongside the size and scale of your business now, and obviously just to try and get ahead.
And finally, Robert, what are your expectations for the market in Q1 and also 2026 as a whole?
I think the market next year, comes back on a broken record, really. If the ZEV mandate remains in place, I think the new car market will be tight. I think people will be trying to maximise the retail market. They'll be wanting to get off to a good start in Q1, which, let's be honest, is the strongest quarter in the year. So I think we'll have a lot of good offers to do. There'll be a lot of people trying to push retail. I think the consumer is probably going to have calmed down after the budget and hopefully will come out and buy cars. Actually, Q1 last year was pretty good, actually. March was up 16% something.
Yeah.
So I think we can probably see that. If we can relax the ZEV mandate, I think then all bets are off, because I think the market could be a lot stronger than it will be if the ZEV mandate remains in place. So I think that's the key issue, more than the economy, actually, more than governments. That could make a big difference, I think. And actually, what we need is a stronger retail market and a weaker fleet market, don't we? Really?
Yes.
Because that's just more healthy. The weighting towards fleet is I've never known a market like it. I don't know whether you have, Philip, in terms of that 65%.
Yeah, we've seen it consistently, haven't we, for the last year or so? Whereas, I remember a time when the market was fairly evenly balanced between fleet and retail, but certainly not this year.
No, and actually, if that ZEV mandate remains in place, that will continue as a dynamic where manufacturers will be probably forced into fleet channels to move their product.
Of course, yeah.
I think like you say, I mean, just sort of summing up there, but to a degree, I think your point on the budget, from a consumer perspective, and you got Christmas, New Year, you hope that, after a plate of turkey and roast potatoes and sprouts, then, the consumer gets to their new threshold of household expenditure. They decide, and they come back into the market. Q1 last year for new and used cars was a strong quarter at the start of this year.
Yeah.
I think, as you say, if the Z mandate is that blocker that is forcing product through the wrong channels at the wrong level of discounts and create...
and at the wrong time of year, isn't it? Because it does make Q4 interesting.
Yeah. And like you say, if the government can look at doing something with that or whatever, or removing it entirely, or whatever it needs to be, because there's other levers in place now, and the transition for the manufacturers is already underway from a production perspective to a more new energy vehicle, be it hybrid or EV. That should then release some of those pressures, get private back up to its 50%, 45-50% and more. That puts profit back into the sector and starts... It
does. And actually, it also provides a long-term view of the manufacturers to start investing, back into the UK, because I think at the moment it's quite difficult. So I think, the industry will do what it does. It will weave its way through it, overcome the obstacles to the extent it can. And I think I'm actually quite looking forward to 2026. I think we've got a lot to do in the business. And I think we can come out of it in a good place.
Yeah. I think, as you say, the sector's been resilient through other times, not dissimilar to this, with headwinds and challenges, and made our way through it. I think clearly we are an 8 million used market and a 2 million new market naturally. If that can be profitable, then that's happy day. That's what you need.
And I think if we can get more certainty on the regulatory environment, then, I think we'll probably buy some businesses anyway, but we'd then look to scale up and buy some more businesses, I think would be the plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as always, Robert, it's great to get your view on things. I know particularly it's always challenging, covering the sector in 20, 30 minutes, and even more so with everything going on and without digging ourselves into the granular stuff. But I think generally, as you say, we're fairly balanced on a 2025, and if a few things can change for 2026, then there's no reason we can, back at it again for another reasonably strong year, isn't it? So,
no, that's right. And thank you very much for your work you do, because I think you've got a very good product with this podcast, and I think it helps people understand things. I certainly listen to it and understand things. I think you do a very good job.
It's been a pleasure having you on throughout 2025, and it may be the last time for this year, but we'll certainly have you back on in the new year, Robert. And
no problem.
We'll see what 2026 looks like from a Robert Forrester and Vertu Motors perspective as well.
Pleasure.
Well, many thanks, Robert, for joining us. Great to catch up with you. Unfortunately, that's all for this bonus episode of Motor Trade Radio. We'll be back on Saturday with the week's headlines. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to this special weekday Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. Philip and Curtis will be back with the week's big motor retailing headlines on Saturday. Live, on demand, wherever you are, on your podcast feed.